The galaxy had existed in a state of relative peace for millennia. The various species that inhabited it, each with their own history, technology, and cultures, had learned to coexist through careful diplomacy and mutual respect. The Galactic Council, formed by the most powerful and wise civilizations, had forged an era of cooperation that spanned light years and connected distant stars through trade, knowledge, and shared governance. The major galactic powers, species of ancient wisdom and intelligence, had settled into their roles as caretakers of the universe's stability. Yet, deep in the outskirts of this vast and tranquil galaxy, on a small, forgotten planet known as Earth, a new species was about to emerge from its primitive origins. Humans, as they called themselves, had just unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel. Their curiosity, ambition, and boundless drive led them into the stars, searching for a place to belong, a place where they could leave their mark upon the galaxy. What no one expected was that the galaxy's worst mistake would begin with their recognition. The first human ship, the Pioneer, burst through the fabric of space into the Galactic Council's territory. It was a small vessel, primitive by galactic standards, its hull a patchwork of old and new technology built from scraps, assembled by a species just learning to expand beyond the boundaries of its home world. The crew, a team of hopeful explorers, had no idea they were about to make history. The first alien they encountered was a representative of the Rhathak, an ancient species known for their intellectual prowess and vast knowledge of the cosmos. The Rhathak had long been the mediators of galactic politics, trusted by all to maintain peace and balance. They had seen empires rise and fall, civilizations flourish and fade into dust. When the Pioneer made contact, the Rhathak did not know what to expect. However, they were certainly not prepared for what followed. "Greetings," the human captain, Emily Cross, spoke over the comms, her voice brimming with both excitement and trepidation. "We come in peace. We are human, from Earth, a world far from here." The Rhathak, observing from their ship, initially reacted with cautious intrigue. They scanned the ship, noted the primitive design, and analyzed the unsteady, yet earnest, transmission. Their superior minds recognized the risk, but they also saw potential. There was something in the humans' willingness to reach out, to communicate despite their obvious lack of understanding of galactic norms, that intrigued them. "We acknowledge your presence," our Rhathak diplomat, Zal, responded. "You are recognized by the Galactic Council as the first human delegation." The decision to recognize humanity as a galactic entity was not an easy one. The Council had established an unwritten rule for millennia: any species entering the stars must prove their worth, their value to the galaxy's complex network. Countless species had risen and fallen, some flourishing, others consumed by their own ambition, leaving scars across the cosmos. Would humans be different? Zal, the Rhathak diplomat, saw something in humanity's spirit that was undeniable, a potential for greatness. Against the advice of more cautious factions, he chose to extend recognition to the humans. It would be the Council's first real test of how they would handle an emerging species, one with no history in the galactic arena, and little understanding of the delicate balance they had worked so hard to maintain. Humanity, thrilled by the recognition, could never have predicted the chain of events that would follow. As humans began to spread their presence across the galaxy, they quickly earned a reputation. Their unyielding optimism, resilience, and surprising adaptability made them valuable allies in times of war and peace. The Rhathak, who had first recognized them, found themselves baffled by humanity's rapid growth, and not just in technological or political terms. The humans' ability to assimilate, their ceaseless drive to expand and dominate, caught the attention of both the Council and other less advanced species. It was their sheer ambition, however, that made the galaxy's older, wiser civilizations nervous. The humans were not content to simply exist as part of the galaxy's fabric, they wanted to lead it. Their relentless pursuit of progress began to raise eyebrows. The first human political body to join the Galactic Council was a provisional representative group, the United Earth Federation. Initially, they were a small voice, but their influence grew quickly. Their demands for more power, for a say in the direction of galactic policies, began to rankle the established powers. It wasn't that humans were unworthy, they had technological prowess and resourcefulness, but their unrelenting self-confidence made many uneasy. The RHATHAC watched with growing concern as the humans pushed for increased representation on the council. They were vocal, persuasive, and, above all, determined. The Galactic Council had long prided itself on its deliberative processes, its careful balance of power. But the humans' blunt force diplomacy and their blatant disregard for these long-established processes began to fracture the once harmonious politics of the galaxy. There was a growing sense that the galaxy was about to undergo a massive shift, one that would be irreversible, no matter the outcome. It was not long before the first signs of trouble emerged. A human-led faction, calling itself the Terran Expansionists, began to take extreme measures. Under the banner of prosperity and exploration, they began to annex unclaimed territories in the galaxy, disregarding the traditional galactic protocols that required consensus and cooperation. The Expansionists, led by a charismatic and ruthless general named Adrian Mercer, quickly gained support from the human populace, who saw no reason not to claim what was theirs by right. Earth's population, with its immense ambition and ever-growing resources, was ready to conquer. The Galactic Council, which had originally welcomed the humans, began to divide over how to respond. The RHATHAC, who had always been the voices of caution, warned that the Terran Expansionists were a destabilizing force. They argued that humans had no understanding of the intricate balance that had kept peace for millennia. Other species, like the Toratha, a telepathic race known for their empathy and foresight, foresaw the inevitable destruction that would result if the Expansionists were allowed to continue unchecked. The Toratha's warning fell on deaf ears. Many in the council dismissed it as paranoia. They were simply too enamored by humanity's boldness, their audacity. And thus, the first fractures appeared. As human expansion spread across the galaxy, so too did the rift between the established civilizations and the newcomers. Tensions rose as the humans took increasingly aggressive stances, disregarding the boundaries drawn by the Council. Many species in the galaxy, including some once allied members of the Council, began to view humans as a growing threat, of force that could not be reasoned with or controlled. In one particularly heated debate within the Galactic Council, Zal, the RHATHAC diplomat who had once extended humanity's invitation into galactic politics, was forced to address the growing anger. "You are not the rulers of this galaxy," a representative from the Charan, an ancient insectoid species, hissed. "Your reckless behavior is threatening to undo all that we have worked for." Human delegates, led by General Mercer, stood their ground, their arrogance and desire for power undeniable. "We will not be subjugated," Mercer declared, his voice cold and firm. "The galaxy will see us as we are, a force of destiny." The council session dissolved into chaos. The forces of peace, once united, now splintered under the weight of human ambition. As the political situation deteriorated, the galaxy watched helplessly. In the wake of the Council's inaction, the Terran Expansionists made their next move. They launched a series of preemptive strikes against the Ikari, a peaceful civilization known for their prowess in energy manipulation. The Expansionists justified the attacks as necessary for galactic security, claiming that the Ikari were harboring insurgents intent on undermining human progress. The Ikari, once the galaxy's shining example of peaceful coexistence, were forced to defend themselves. The war that followed was unlike any the galaxy had seen. The advanced technology of the humans, combined with their raw tenacity, gave them an edge over the more passive species they encountered. The Ikari, forced into conflict for the first time in centuries, fought back with desperate fury, but it was clear that the galactic order was collapsing. The galaxy's older powers began to take sides, with some species siding with the Expansionists, others opposing them. The conflict spread like wildfire, infecting every corner of the galaxy. The galaxy had made its worst mistake recognizing humans. The war raged on, and the galaxy fractured irreparably. The once cohesive Galactic Council became a shell of its former self, its decisions ignored by the humans, who had established their own alliances and territorial boundaries. There was no more talk of diplomacy or peace. Every faction, every species, was now preparing for war. In the midst of this chaos, the Rhathak, once the galaxy's stewards, watched with horror as their vision for a peaceful universe disintegrated. They saw the humans driven by greed, pride, and ambition becoming the catalyst for a galaxy-wide conflict that would shape the future for eons to come. And thus, the galaxy's worst mistake became apparent. As the war reached its climax, the forces of peace gathered for one final stand. The Ikari, Toretha, and other species that had once hoped for unity now fought for survival. The humans, led by General Mercer, were on the verge of dominating the galaxy. But there was one final, devastating truth: in their pursuit of victory, they had become the very thing they had once feared, just another empire, destined to fall. The battle for the galaxy would determine whether humanity would succeed in its quest for dominance or whether the galaxy's older powers would be able to extinguish the fire they had unleashed. The reckoning was coming. The war between the Terran expansionists and the galaxy's once unified species had taken a heavy toll. Entire star systems were left in ruins, their populations decimated by the relentless human drive for control. With each passing day, the balance of power shifted in favor of the humans, whose militaristic strategies and superior technology made them an unstoppable force. The galaxy's greatest mistake, their recognition of humanity, was now a bitter reality. The unified coalition of galactic powers that had once ensured peace now found itself splintered beyond repair. The Rhathak, once the architects of this peace, had become nothing more than bystanders in a conflict they had failed to avert. Even the great empires of the Sharan, Ikari, and Toretha had fallen victim to human aggression, forced to either align with the expansionists or fight a losing war of attrition. Zal, the Rhathak diplomat who had once welcomed humanity with cautious optimism, now watched in despair as the last vestiges of galactic unity crumbled. The Rhathak had underestimated the ruthlessness of humanity's ambition. And now, as they watched planets burn and entire species fall, they realized the full extent of their mistake. But even amidst the destruction, a flicker of hope remained. A small group of individuals from across the galaxy, who had once been part of the now defunct Galactic Council, began to form a clandestine alliance. Led by Mira Ashford, a human-born dissenter who had witnessed the growing militarization of her people and the destruction it caused, the group's goal was simple: to stop the Terran expansionists at all costs, and to restore peace to the galaxy, no matter the personal sacrifice. Mira was an anomaly among humans, a woman who saw the potential for humanity's greatness, but who also understood the catastrophic consequences of unchecked ambition. Her ancestors had played a part in humanity's early rise, but she was determined not to repeat their mistakes. She and her new allies, a disparate group of Ikari, Rhathak, and even a few former Toretha, began to quietly gather resources. Their mission was dangerous. If discovered, they would be labeled as traitors, hunted by both the Terran expansionists and the remaining galactic powers who saw humanity's rise as inevitable. Mira Ashford's alliance began to move in the shadows, striking against human-controlled outposts and sabotaging key supply lines. They were determined to stop the war from escalating further, but the cost was steep. Every day, their numbers grew smaller as they faced retaliation from the human military, led by General Mercer, whose forces were relentless in their pursuit of total domination. In a covert operation, Mira and her allies infiltrated one of the expansionist strongholds, an immense space station orbiting a resource-rich planet in the Arcani system. The station's primary function was to mine and refine the vital resources necessary for the human war machine. Mira and her team had a single mission: disable the station's energy core, cutting off its supply and crippling the expansionist fleet. The operation was fraught with danger. The humans had placed high-level security on the station, and its perimeter was surrounded by a fleet of warships. The group worked in silence, moving swiftly through the station's maze of corridors and cutting-edge security systems. Every step was a calculated risk, but they had no choice. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance. As Mira and the team reached the central core, a voice echoed from the shadows. "I knew you would come." Mira froze. From the dark recesses of the station, General Adrian Mercer himself stepped forward, flanked by two heavily armed soldiers. His cold blue eyes locked onto hers, a smirk curling on his lips. "You humans never learn," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can stop the inevitable? The galaxy belongs to us now. And there's nothing you can do to change that." Mira didn't hesitate. She raised her weapon, aiming it squarely at Mercer. "The galaxy will never belong to anyone," she retorted, her voice hard with conviction. "Not as long as there are those who still remember what peace means." Mercer laughed bitterly, his soldiers moving into position. "You should know by now, Ashford, peace is a luxury. A fantasy. And humanity doesn't have the time for dreams." With a swift motion, he signaled his troops to attack. Myra's team reacted instantly, the ensuing firefight loud and violent. In the chaos, Myra's thoughts raced. If they didn't stop the core, the expansionist warships would receive a boost in power enough to tip the balance of the war irreversibly in humanity's favor. As the battle raged, Mira made a decision. She ordered her team to focus on the core while she confronted Mercer directly. "You're making a mistake," Mira shouted as she dodged behind cover, firing shots at Mercer's men. "Humanity's path doesn't have to be one of destruction. You can change, you can learn from your mistakes." Mercer sneered, aiming his weapon at her. "You're now VE, Mira. You think I'm the problem? The real issue is the galaxy. It's too fractured, too weak to ever thrive without strong leadership. And humanity," he paused, his voice turning icy, "is the only species with the strength to lead." Myra's heart pounded in her chest as she took aim. But before she could fire, the ground shook. The station's central core began to collapse, a result of her team's efforts to destabilize its energy matrix. The lights flickered, alarms blared. Mercer, momentarily distracted by the unfolding crisis, cursed under his breath. "Get to the escape pods. Now!" He shouted to his soldiers, but it was too late. With a final defiant gesture, Mira turned to leave the chamber, her team falling back. But as she reached the exit, Mercer's voice rang out behind her. "You can't stop us. Humanity's destiny is written in the stars, and there's nothing you can do to change it." The station's core detonated moments later, sending shockwaves through the region. Mira and her team barely made it out alive, escaping to a nearby rebel fleet. But as she watched the expanding wave of destruction from a safe distance, a gnawing fear settled in her stomach. This battle, though won, was only the beginning. The sabotage of the Arcanes station was a major blow to the Terran expansionists, but it was only a temporary setback. As the war continued to rage, it became clear that the galaxy's fate rested in the hands of those who were willing to fight for it, and Mira Ashford's rebellion had become a symbol of hope. Across the galaxy, more species began to join the cause, but the task of halting humanity's advance was monumental. The human military, despite their increasing losses, was well-funded, highly organized, and led by an unyielding belief in their superiority. General Mercer's forces pushed forward, consuming planets and expanding territory at an alarming rate. As the war progressed, new alliances were formed. Some species once allied with humanity now found themselves standing against them, realizing that the unchecked ambition of the Terran expansionists would spell the end of galactic peace. And yet, despite all the odds, the rebellion grew stronger. Mira Ashford's leadership, coupled with the united front of the galaxy's most diverse factions, had begun to turn the tide. But they were far from winning. The Terran forces were more entrenched, more relentless than ever, and they had an entire galaxy's worth of resources at their disposal. The question now wasn't if the galaxy could survive, it was whether they could ever come together long enough to defeat the unstoppable human war machine. As the war reached its final stages, Mira stood before the Galactic Council's remnants, her mind heavy with the choices that lay ahead. The situation was dire. Humanity, under General Mercer's command, had become too powerful to ignore. Entire fleets of alien vessels had been shattered, and the galaxy was on the brink of collapse. We cannot allow humanity to win this, Mira said, her voice unwavering as she addressed the remnants of the council. We must unite every species, every faction. If we don't, everything we've fought for will be destroyed. The galaxy will fall into the hands of those who only see it as a tool to control. But one council member, a representative of the Sharan, spoke up, her voice tinged with a quiet sadness. And what happens if we defeat them? What happens when we push humanity back into its place? Will we simply become the next target? Is that truly the future we want? Mira looked out over the assembled council, a sense of realization dawning upon her. The galaxy's greatest mistake, recognizing humanity, had led them to this point. But now, the future of the galaxy depended not on whether humanity could be defeated, but whether it could be redeemed. Whether the species that had caused so much destruction could still learn to live in harmony with the rest of the galaxy. And that was the ultimate decision, the decision that would shape the next era of the galaxy. Mira Ashford's mind raced as she stood in the cold, sterile chambers of the Galactic Council. The representatives from various species Rhathak, Toratha, Ikari, Sharan, and others watched her with a mixture of skepticism and hope. There was an air of finality in the room. The galaxy stood at a crossroads, one path leading to all-out annihilation and the other to an uncertain, but potentially redemptive, future. What do you propose, Mira? Zal, the Rhathak diplomat who had once championed humanity's inclusion into the galaxy, asked, his tone wearied but tinged with a glimmer of hope. His people had seen the rise of many civilizations, some of whom fell under their own weight, but humanity was unlike anything they had encountered. Their ambition, their capacity for both creation and destruction, had thrown everything into disarray. He wanted to believe in humanity's redemption, but the cost of their hubris had been so great. Mira took a deep breath and addressed the council with a clarity that had been born of years of struggle, sacrifice, and loss. We need to offer humanity a chance to atone for its mistakes. Not through force, not through destruction, but through cooperation. If we defeat them, if we destroy the Terran expansionists once and for all, we risk plunging the galaxy into endless cycles of war. Every species here knows the consequences of unchecked ambition. But we also know the potential for redemption. Her words hung in the air like a heavy mist. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The Rhathak were divided. Some agreed with Mira, believing that the only way to prevent total annihilation was to find a way to bring humanity back into the fold. Others saw no way forward but the complete eradication of the Terran forces. What you're asking is impossible, one of the Sharan delegates spat. Humanity's actions have shown us that they will never change. They have already proven they are not interested in peace, they are bent on domination. Mira turned to face the Sharan, her expression firm but tempered with compassion. I understand your fear. I share it. But I believe in the possibility of change. If we continue to fight without a plan for humanity's future, we risk becoming just like them, endlessly warring, endlessly destroying, until there is nothing left. There was a long silence in the chamber. Mira knew the stakes. She was asking for a gamble, perhaps the greatest gamble the galaxy had ever faced. She was asking the council to trust that humanity, despite its grave mistakes, could still evolve. She was asking them to see beyond the scars they had inflicted on the galaxy, to envision a future where humanity, along with the other species, could build something greater than themselves. It was then that a voice cut through the tension. Perhaps there is another way, said Jalara, a Toratha representative who had remained silent for much of the debate. The path of war will not lead to victory. But perhaps, if we offer humanity something they value, something they can fight for other than power, we may be able to redirect their ambition. Myra's heart skipped a beat. Jalara's words were unexpected but powerful. The Toratha were a species known for their telepathic abilities and deep empathy, capable of seeing through the emotions and desires of others. They had been hesitant to get involved in the conflict, but Jalara's suggestion now seemed like a beacon of hope. What do you mean? Mira asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Jalara's translucent, almost shimmering form shifted slightly as she spoke. Humans value their freedom perhaps more than any other species we have encountered. They see the galaxy not as a unified whole, but as a vast expanse of territory to conquer. But they are also passionate about their individuality. If we can offer them a path to gain something that they believe is worth fighting for, a future where they can carve out their own place in the galaxy, but without domination, we might be able to bring them to the table. Zal leaned forward, intrigued. You propose a separate human domain, a region of space that they can claim, but without the threat of conquest? Jalara nodded. Yes. It would not be an easy offer, and it would take time. We would need to negotiate with them, but if we give them the opportunity to lead their own people within the context of a peaceful galaxy, perhaps they will see the benefits of cooperation over conquest. Myra's mind whirled with the possibilities. A separate domain for humanity, where they could build their future, free from the ambitions of the galactic powers, but within the larger framework of the galaxy. It was a radical idea. One that could either be the solution they so desperately needed, or the final nail in the coffin. What if they refuse? Asked the Akari representative, her large, expressive eyes betraying her unease. What if they see this offer as weakness? It's a risk, Mira admitted. But I believe it is the only way. If we continue on this path of total war, there will be no galaxy left to save. No species will stand victorious in the end. We must give humanity a chance to redefine itself. The council members sat in tense silence. Mira had laid out her proposal, and now the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. It would be a bold move, an unprecedented one, but perhaps the only one that could save them all. The moment of decision came swiftly. A delegation from the Galactic Council, led by Mira, prepared to meet with the human leadership. General Adrian Mercer had already declared that humanity would never back down from their quest for supremacy. The Terran expansionists were entrenched across multiple star systems, their fleets positioned like a sword hanging over the galaxy's neck. Yet there was something different in the air now, an uneasy tension that hinted at the possibility of a breakthrough. Mira and her team arrived aboard a massive human warship, the Tyrant, where Mercer awaited them. His reputation preceded him: cold, calculating, and resolute in his belief that humanity was destined to rule the stars. The human military had suffered losses, but Mercer had been unwilling to consider peace. Now, he stood at a crossroads as well, a crossroads that could either make or break humanity's future. Mira stood before him, her gaze unwavering. General Mercer, we've come to offer humanity a path forward. A path that doesn't involve endless war and destruction. Mercer's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? That we abandon our goals? That we cower before the weakness of the galaxy's other species? Myra's voice was calm but firm. We offer you a place in the galaxy. A domain of your own territory that you can govern as you see fit, but within the framework of galactic peace. No more war, no more conquest. But you will have the freedom to chart your own destiny without the threat of war from other species. Mercer's reaction was immediate. His lip curled into a sneer. You expect me to surrender our future? To settle for a corner of space and call it peace? Humans will never settle for that. We were born to conquer. But you were also born to survive, General, Mira said softly. And survival depends on understanding that the galaxy cannot be ruled by one species alone. We must work together, or we risk losing everything. Mercer's eyes flickered with something doubt, perhaps. The possibility that he might be wrong, that he might have miscalculated. But the fire of human pride burned brightly in his chest. Your offer is weak, he spat. You will regret it. Mira remained silent, knowing the truth of the situation. Whether he accepted it or not, this was the last chance humanity had to avoid total collapse. She could only hope that within Mercer's hardened heart, there was still room for something more, something greater than conquest. I'll give you one last chance to reconsider, General, Mira said, turning to leave. The future is still ours to decide. The galaxy can still be saved. The meeting with General Mercer ended with no resolution. The Terran expansionists, fueled by their unyielding belief in their right to dominate, rejected the offer. It was clear that the war would continue. But Mira knew one thing for certain: she had given humanity a choice, a chance to choose their future. The rest, now, was in their hands. As Mira walked away from the tyrant, the sound of distant explosions rumbled across the shipyard. The war was far from over, and the galaxy still hung in the balance. But the seeds of hope had been planted. Humanity had been given a choice, and now they had to live with the consequences of their own decisions. And perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest mistake the galaxy had ever made, the recognition of humanity, could still be reversed. Through the strength of unity, through the courage to choose peace over war, there was still hope. But the story was far from finished. The galaxy, once united under a fragile peace, now stood on the brink of something far more uncertain than war. Humanity had been offered the chance to choose a new path, one of coexistence, not conquest. And while Mira Ashford and her allies had hoped that this new opportunity would spark a revolution of thought in humanity's heart, the answer had come not as a grand revelation, but in the cold, brutal clarity of continued defiance. General Adrian Mercer had refused. His belief in humanity's supremacy ran too deep, and his pride blinded him to the galaxy's potential for peaceful coexistence. For him, the conquest was not only a necessity, it was the only way forward. But Mira had not given up. She had long understood that the road to redemption for humanity would be a difficult and painful one, a path fraught with resistance. Still, as she looked out at the vastness of the galaxy from the observation deck of the rebel flagship, the Hope, she understood something crucial. The battle for humanity's soul had just begun. The conflict was far from over. The battlefronts were shifting, and merciless as it seemed, humanity's relentless drive for dominance continued to ravage the galaxy's core. Yet amidst the chaos, the seeds of rebellion, those who believed that humanity could rise above its basest instincts, were spreading like fire across the stars. Mira's team and their allies had dealt a decisive blow to the expansionist war effort, but not without cost. Many worlds had been lost, many lives sacrificed, and entire fleets had been shattered in the conflict. But there was no turning back now. The war had become a test not only of military might, but of willpower, conviction, and the future each side was willing to build. Humanity's fate rested on a single choice: would they continue down the path of endless conquest, or would they turn back and seek to rebuild, to forge alliances, and to re-enter a galaxy that had once welcomed them? As the human war machine continued its march, signs of fracture began to appear. The might of the Terran expansionists could no longer silence every dissenting voice. Human colonists who had once joined the crusade of conquest began to question their purpose, their place in the war. Resistance groups grew, first small and scattered, then larger, more organized. Mira and her allies were not alone in their struggle anymore. Rebel cells formed not just in human space, but throughout the galaxy, all working toward the same singular goal: to bring down the tyranny of the expansionists and offer humanity the path to redemption. One such cell was led by an unlikely figure, Captain Lorna Hayes, a former Terran military officer who had defected after witnessing the horrors the expansionists were inflicting. She had become one of the most vocal leaders of the rebellion, rallying human defectors to the cause, urging them to fight not for conquest, but for freedom, justice, and a chance at reconciliation. The movement had grown faster than Mira had anticipated. Whispers of dissent reached Mercer's command, and soon, battles were fought not only between the galactic powers and human forces, but between humans themselves. The lines between friend and foe blurred. And the very empire that had once seemed invincible began to show signs of unraveling from within. But the heart of the rebellion had always been Mira's message: humanity could still change, still become something greater than its ambition for power. The galaxy's worst mistake, their recognition of humanity could be redeemed, not by force, but through compassion, understanding, and the choice to fight for a shared future, not just for domination. The final battle took place in the Valtorian Nebula, a cluster of unstable stars that had become a staging ground for a decisive confrontation. The human fleet, divided and fractured, had come together once more, but under different banners. Myra's forces and the human defectors, alongside the alien rebels, prepared for what they knew would be the ultimate test. General Mercer, now isolated with his loyalists, had led his forces into the heart of the nebula, where an ancient superweapon and artifact of power capable of decimating entire star systems was housed. He believed that with this weapon, humanity would finally have the power to crush all opposition. His arrogance was the last barrier between the galaxy and peace. But Mira had one final card to play. She made her way to the heart of the battlefield, aboard a small shuttle, flanked by a small crew of trusted allies. Their goal wasn't to destroy Mercer or his fleet. No, it was something far more difficult, to appeal to his sense of humanity. To convince him, one last time, that there was a better way. As the fleets collided in a blaze of light and sound, Myra's shuttle broke through the chaos and entered Mercer's command ship, the Excalibur. She was met by his cold, unyielding gaze as the door slid open. "Mira Ashford," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Still preaching your foolish dream of peace. Haven't you learned? Peace is a lie. The galaxy is chaos. Only those who are strong survive. And humanity is strong." Mira stepped forward, undeterred. "Mercer, listen to me. The galaxy is not a place for one species to dominate. We've seen what that path leads to. You're right about one thing: the galaxy is chaos. But we can change that. We can choose to build something better. Together." Mercer's eyes flickered with something uncertainty, perhaps. The very thing he had fought so long to suppress, doubt. But he remained silent, unwilling to yield. "We can't undo the mistakes we've made," Mira continued, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "But we can stop making them. This war, this endless cycle, it has to end. We have a choice. You have a choice. Humanity can be more than this. More than conquerors." For a long moment, Mercer stood still, the weight of Myra's words pressing down on him. The weapon stood ready, its dark power radiating from the center of his ship. But even as he reached for the controls to unleash its fury, something shifted in his mind. The images of the destruction, the loss, the dead. He knew the cost of his path, but he had never allowed himself to face it. Mercer's voice cracked, the first sign of vulnerability he had shown in years. His hand hovered over the control panel, and for a brief, painful moment, he considered the weight of what he was about to do. But then, with a sudden, decisive motion, he slammed his hand down on the console, deactivating the superweapon. "You're right," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I've been wrong. All along." The command ship shook, alarms blaring as the weapon powered down. The battle outside began to falter as the human fleet hesitated, the voice of reason finally reaching through. In the wake of the Valtorian Nebula battle, the Terran expansionists were fractured, their command structure in disarray. Mercer, his conscience awakened, agreed to a ceasefire with the Galactic Council, offering humanity surrender in exchange for a path to redemption. The galaxy, after years of war, finally saw a glimmer of peace. But this peace was not born of military victory. It was born of choice, the choice to reject the endless cycle of conquest, the choice to rebuild, the choice to heal. Humanity would take its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as partners. They would have a territory of their own, a place where they could begin again, free from the shadows of their past mistakes. But they would never forget the cost of their hubris, and they would work with the other species to ensure that the galaxy's future would be one of cooperation, not domination. The galaxy's worst mistake, the recognition of humanity, had, in the end, become its greatest redemption. And from that day forward, the stars held a promise that even the most fractured and lost civilizations could find their way back to the light.